You are about to experience the Core Academy podcast. Welcome to the flow.
All right, here we go. You ready, Brandon?
Are we live?
We're going.
All right,
Let's do it. Episode 3 with Moshe Berserker
Brandon Durham
and
Jamie Nottingham.
Awesome. All right, so
Core Academy podcast, episode 3. Man, we're here.
You should introduce Jamie.
All right,
Let's start from the beginning. I mean, we don't have to go like way back, but
well, these are part of the questions because the way Jamie came in was through an ad that we were running. Am I correct?
Yep, absolutely.
And was it a real ad or was it like an ad telling you that we're gonna make you into like a martial art movie star, or was it the actual ad for the becoming an instructor and training, getting paid to train?
I think it was like the if you can make us money, then contact us. I think it was Chad had put it out thinking like people who wanted to run classes as like independent contractors out of there would pick up on it and come in on that.
All right. I thought you came in on get paid to train if like you love martial arts and that's how we met you. I don't remember. I wasn't part of that part, you know.
I remember those ads.
Got hooked.
They were built on developing young businessmen and martial artists.
Yeah.
To be able to like train under your wing and then be able to establish themselves as instructors and professionals.
Yeah, because what we found was when we would put just a regular ad out for, an instructor or a program director, we wouldn't get what we needed, 99% of the time, and we wind up having to train people. So having someone who loves martial arts or someone who's a good athlete or someone who can learn and follow good directions and great personality, we'll train them. And it's you think about any dollar that you spend in business is really an investment. So we had no problem investing in the right person. And then here comes Jamie Nottingham. So can you remember how you started at the gym back in the days in Westchester with us?
I only remember because it was such a crazy thing that happened. I got the address mixed up for Chad had sent me, said, oh, come in and do like a kickboxing class, like if one of the fitness kickboxing classes, kind of like just to see what I was like, see what kind of shape I was in, I guess, and see maybe if I could teach the class. And I got the address to the school mixed up, and I was 15 minutes late, and I really had to use the bathroom, so I was kind of speeding, and the parking lot is an old go-kart course, so there's all these weird islands in it. So I'm speeding around the backside of the parking lot, and I just crash into one of those islands at 30 miles an hour and total the car that I was driving.
On the way to your first
interview.
Day.
Yeah, I'm already 15 minutes late. And so I call Chad, and I'm like, yeah, I just totaled the car, but I think I'm in the parking lot, so I'm just going to come in. So I came in, and I talked to him for a little bit, and then I ended up coming back again and, actually doing the class when I was on time for it. And afterwards, I got the job, and he was like, yeah, when you still came in right after you totaled the car, we figured you might make some mistakes, but that you were pretty reliable.
Love it. That's amazing.
That's funny.
So what was your first professional job as a martial artist in the school?
I think it was just working at the desk. I think I started off working at the desk, and then I was training to do the kickboxing classes, which I kind of did on an accelerated basis because I already knew how to punch and kick, and I was in pretty good shape and stuff.
Where had you learned how to do that?
I trained martial arts from the time I was a kid, kind of on and off. When I was really young, I did this some kind of karate, but then the instructor was hitting on my mom, so she took me out of the class. And then
we won't ask who. I mean, we will after
later.
I stop recording.
And then when I was a little bit older, I did Japanese Jiu-Jitsu for a little bit, but then I think I ended up moving out of that town. And then when I was 12 and 13, I started really doing Taekwondo, for real. And I stuck with that until I got my black belt. And then I also at the same time was training with my stepdad, who was a pretty good martial artist, and he would kind of take me through and show me different ways to do things.
Were you competing as a child?
In Taekwondo, I competed a little bit, but the school, they weren't really that into it, and honestly, it became a really big point of contention between me and them, because I was like going to competitions and doing really well, but then they weren't willing to take me more often or even give me information about it, and it kind of was like, well, what's going on here? Like, kind of felt stifled by the environment. It was like a very cookie cutter school.
All right, now let's go back a little bit. You just mentioned your stepdad. I met your stepdad years ago.
Yes.
When he had his place in Somers. Okay, I was I think I lived in Somers. I think I just moved to Shenorock back in those days, and I was driving around. I saw that there was like this martial arts school on the corner, and I, like every martial artist, I don't know about every martial artist, but I know for me, ever since I was a little kid, any martial arts school I ever saw, I like made my parents stop. I went to look into it. I actually really stopped doing that once I had like a big successful school, But up until that point, like every school I looked at, I just want to stop and check them out. So I went in and introduced himself. I didn't know at the time, but your mom was there. Oh. All right. So I met your stepdad and your mom, I don't know, maybe 10 years before you ever even came to our doors. Isn't it wild? Small world, right?
Well, it's even crazier than that. When I was a little kid, I actually went to one of your birthday parties. You did a birthday party for Teddy Graves, I think. And I was there. So I seen you
hype
cut the
boy.
Cake. I seen you cut the cake as
with the sword, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, our birthday parties were cut above the rest because we cut that cake with the sword, man. That was our thing.
No, it was fun. I was like, man, I want to do kung fu. I'm sick of this other stuff.
Oh, yeah, that was so great. That was so great. Well, so when you came to the school, you started out teaching the heavy bag class, right? The fitness kickboxing class. It's funny because back in the days, like when fitness kickboxing started to get big, we would have people come to take the class. And one time, this woman walked in, and she had a pretty big chip on her shoulder. She thought she was really really cool and hot stuff. And she walked in. She was like, "Hey, do you guys teach kickboxing?" And the answer, we're like, well, yeah, we teach kickboxing. She goes, no. Do you teach real kickboxing? And I was like, hold on a second. What exactly do you mean? Where are you going with this? And back in those days, real kickboxing was hitting the heavy bag to a lot of the fitness people. And like the fake kickboxing or aerobic kickboxing or cardio kickboxing was like Taibo, where you're just doing moves in the air. You're not actually making any contact, hitting mitts or doing pad work, right? So to the fitness world, real kickboxing was just hitting the heavy bag, the heavy bag class. So she's like, no, do you guys teach real kickboxing? And I was like, do you mean heavy bag class versus cardio? She goes, yeah, I want to hit the heavy bag. And at the time, we didn't have the heavy bag class. We just did cardio. We had like 50 and 60 people on the mat in cardio. We were doing it pretty well with that back in the days. So she's like, no, I want real kickboxing, not that cardio stuff. So I said, we do actually have a real kickboxing class, but that's when you get in the ring and you get punched and kicked in the face repeatedly. Is that what you like? And she was like, no, I think I'll try the heavy bag class. It's like real kickboxing is really getting punched and kicked and elbowed and kneed in the face versus the heavy bag class, which is still real kickboxing. You're learning techniques. You get a great workout. And then so is cardio kickboxing. If you have the right instructor, if they put it together in a way that's to the music and to the beat and you get a good workout using technique, it's great. But yeah, man, I met your stepdad and your mom. Walked into their school over in Somers, and basically we had a play date that day. Like they showed me all their equipment and training tools, and it was really really cool. And then years later, you come in and you started with the kickboxing class, right?
How had you trained any jiu-jitsu at that point?
I had done there was some basic knowledge available of like submissions, and I definitely like wrestled with people and tried to use it and stuff, but it wasn't like the same thing as this like the systems that are available today.
Did you wrestle in school?
Or grapple?
A little bit. I didn't like it because they didn't allow me to do the submissions, so I was kind of like, this is dumb. Like I want to choke them and do a kimura. Like what is this? Like I found wrestling kind of frustrating, honestly.
So you started diving into Brazilian jiu-jitsu when
I started working,
yeah.
So your first class was with me?
Yep.
With us?
Yeah. I actually think I was partnered with you in your first class.
Oh, really?
Yes.
That's wild.
Yeah, I think I was. And I think I remember being like, wow, there's like you were one of the very few people that understood it before you even like had a chance to understand it. You picked it up ridiculously fast. I don't say this about a lot of people. And in my industry, when I see artists working, glass artists, when there's some people that they just pick up the material and it speaks to them and they understand it. And I'm sure martial arts is, I know it's clearly in your blood and in your past but I feel like jiu-jitsu is very different than most martial arts, and you were just able to, you saw it right away.
Well, you know what's funny about what I know about Jamie's background is I know that you have an intense yoga background, and I know you played football. So if you think about, you know, how you have to understand the body and mechanics to be a good football player, regardless of what position you play, there has to be a level of toughness and athleticism that comes from that. And then the connection to your body and your spirituality through yoga and your flexibility and your breathing. And it's almost like it's a natural evolution for you to develop into jiu-jitsu that way. Right? Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the yoga is really, really similar to grappling in a weird way, because like you're kind of moving and you have this resistance. I mean, in yoga, the resistance is inside your body. It's the stiffness and the tightness in your body. But then you're moving and you're sweating and you're kind of working with this resistance, and you're kind of trying to manage your breath so that you don't get out of breath, so you can continue doing what you're doing. There really is a very strong similarity to wrestling there.
You say it sounds like jiu-jitsu, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, how did it feel when you first started training? Were you did you experience in something profound? Was it just another sort of form of martial arts? Was it like, you know, how did you?
It was very enjoyable. Like I felt very naturally competitive with it, and that's something that some of the people that I've worked with that were really like better and kind of like have some accolades, that they experienced this too, that they were like, you know, like it was just all about like tapping people. Like I was just like, oh, can I tap that person? I want to tap that person. Like it was like I had a list. I was like, did I tap all those people? Okay, well I gotta find more people to tap. Like, and it's kind of still like that for me. I mean, I almost like don't want to say it because it sounds bad, but it's like all about like, okay, well I rolled with that guy and I didn't get tapped, and I tapped so-and-so, and it can be very competitive in that way, but it's very enjoyable. It's not like, it doesn't feel negative to me at all. I mean, I would never like, you know, want people to perceive it that way. It's just extremely like a video game almost. In fact, at times I've said, like, I was like, you know, we should just have leaderboards in jiu-jitsu. Like every roll in the gym should just be up on an electronic board that gets recorded, and everybody's like, everyone would quit, Jamie. And I'm like, but why? I'm like, if video game people can handle it, why can't we?
Because you can do things in video games that you can't do in real life.
Yeah, right.
And people can handle in video games. You've seen
freak
videos,
out.
they
Yeah,
break
you're
their
right.
TV,
Listen.
throw their remote, right?
Listen,
happens.
If I can mentally tap you and have my body do what my mind wants it to do, then sure, let's do the leaderboard. I'm all in.
So, Jamie, tell us about how you went from being an instructor, right? Professional instructor. You were teaching, you were training. Your first taste of competition where you decided that that's what you really want to do, and it made a shift in your life. Because I remember when you moved on to go and pursue that. But can you tell us like how that came about?
I think that like it kind of comes back sort of full circle to the yoga stuff, is that I got into yoga because I was doing meditation, and I was kind of interested in that and the idea of like, you know, spiritual development, that kind of thing. And over time I began looking for like different ways to kind of get that to happen. And when I started training jiu-jitsu, I had a couple experiences. Actually, the first one of these was with Professor Tony Passos, rolling with him and just feeling crushed, like I can't get out and trapped, almost like you're gonna have a panic attack. And it kind of made me realize, I was like, you know, wow, there's something kind of spiritually profound in this jiu-jitsu stuff, that if I can ride through those moments, that it'll have carry over to my meditation and to life. Like, you know, because that's the same stuff that happens in your life. You get overwhelmed, you make a bad decision. It's just like jiu-jitsu. So when I had that first experience, it wasn't in competition, but I realized that I could definitely achieve that like very reliably through competing. And that's when I was like, man, this competition stuff has to become part of my toolkit. And I also felt like people told me, hey, competition's like 30 classes. And I was like, that's ridiculous. But then I went and competed, and I was like, it's almost true. Like one competition, like the experience, and it kind of makes sense based off brain science that because you're more emotionally aroused during the competition, the imprints are deeper. So if you successfully pull off a kimura or a triangle or a heel hook, those neural circuits are actually wired a lot deeper than if you had just done it in a roll in class or while you're drilling, which is even less.
Because there's some value to it.
Yeah, the emotion behind it and the fact that you pulled it off in the pressure situation, it makes a deeper connection in your brain.
It makes complete and total sense. I mean, you think about when you go to a competition, the emotions you're talking about, the fear, the uncertainty, right?
Yeah.
Not knowing what the outcome's going to be. Because when you go to class over and over and over again, depending on who you roll with, you kind of know what the outcome's going to be.
Generally, yeah.
Right,
Yep.
I'm rolling with this guy. He usually beats me. I'm probably going to lose today. He's going to tap me with X, Y, or Z. Or I'm better than this guy. I'm going to tap that. And you kind of know. When you go to a competition, you don't. So there's anxiety and it's different pressures, right? It could be the pressure that maybe a coach is there or someone that you want to impress is there or someone that makes you nervous is there. So that makes a ton of sense.
What was your first experience with competition like?
My first jiu-jitsu competition was
or those early competition. I don't know how many.
The first one
into.
was good. I mean, I went to like a Naga somewhere in Maryland, and I did well. I got like first in my division in Nogi, and then did another division. Nogi got first. It was weird because I wasn't training Nogi at the time. We only did gi at the gym, so I don't know what I was doing, but. And then I got second in the gi. And then after that, I went on like a wild losing streak. Like I think I lost like 6 competitions in a row. Like first round, just like knocked out. There were like a lot of factors with that.
Were they all jiu-jitsu competitions?
Those were, yeah.
Those were.
Yeah. It was interesting. I mean, like, I wasn't super discouraged by it because I kind of just felt like I was like, it makes sense. I mean, I stepped up the level of the competitions that I was going to. It definitely wasn't fun, but I learned a lot from those experiences. I kind of don't like the idea of like, oh, you win or you learn, only because number one, I wouldn't want to encourage people to lose. Like I think that part of playing the game is trying to win, and you have to try to win genuinely in order to run the experiment. That doesn't mean you're overly attached to it, but you have to sort of put enough skin in the game for the process to work on you. And then the other thing is that, when you lose, you don't necessarily learn. You have to do a lot of reflection. I think it's harder to learn from losses than wins because the wins are inherently positive and you just look at it and you're like, oh, I did this and it worked for me. And it's like, wow. And then even if you did something negative, you're like, oh, I made this mistake, but it's very easy to deal with. With the loss, there's this like kind of negative emotional quality, and it's easier to just sort of put it on the back burner and forget about it rather than analyze exactly what went on.
Yeah, it's sort of like an amnesia that your mind uses to protect itself from loss or devastating outcomes. Yeah, I think part of being a good competitor, I would imagine, is being able to accept the losses as successes in some ways, and you have to learn from every experience that you have. I mean, would you say like you've learned more about yourself from losing than from winning, or vice versa?
It's very hard to say. I can't say that, actually. I'd have to say no because especially recently I've won so many matches. Like I've won 21 matches, lost 1, and had 1 draw in the last year. So I don't really have that many losses to learn from. I'm learning a lot from winning, honestly. But the thing is, like, I think ultimately it's the same because whether you're winning or losing, it's about not making not making an emotional judgment about what's happened and just accepting it. So I look at my wins very critically. I'm like, oh man, like there's things here I could have done better. There's things there I could have.
It's like, how did you win?
Exactly. Yeah, right. Absolutely.
Or how, what was your strategy going in, and did you have to break your plan and default to something else, and you won more by a scramble or getting in a position that you didn't want, right?
My recent wins are way better to me than the ones I had at the beginning of this sort of winning streak.
Is that because you had sorry, Moshe? Is that because you had a strategy going in that you stuck to? Was it a different psychology behind it?
Yes, it's because
without giving up too much.
it's like it's a full circle thing, because in the beginning I had a strong strategy and I stuck to it and that worked for me, but I was like tied to it in a neurotic way. And then I sort of went through something where I was lax mentally from winning and I was like slipping up and not really paying attention to my strategy, and then I kind of came back to the strategy but in a more mature way is the only way I can describe it.
So let's elaborate on the topic of strategy, because
Sure.
I think it's interesting. Obviously, strategies in life, strategies on the mat when we train, and strategies when you walk into a competition. So do you have habits within those strategies, or do you create strategies for each specific opponent? Do you create a new strategy as your game evolves? Like, how would you say you go about developing?
I think that's a great question, because for me it gets into what I think the one of the biggest misconceptions in martial arts is. So I think really good martial artists for the most part have a small number of finishing techniques or finishing moves that they use. And if you think about the animal kingdom, it makes a lot of sense. Like, most animals have one primary way that they take out another animal. They have one kind of kill shot. And what martial arts really is for, it's for getting you to your kill shot. Every person is going to have a different thing that they're really good at. Some people, and it could be more than one thing, that's absolutely possible, but some people are going to be really good at choking. Some people are going to be really good at joint locks. Once you understand and you've developed that sort of specialty, the rest of the martial arts techniques, for me, is actually about getting me to those techniques successfully. So if you don't allow me to do what I want with you, you're going to get caught in an armbar or a kimura or a choke or something else. But if I go the way I want to go, you're probably going to get put in a heel hook.
Okay, so what are some things that you do to try and follow through with your strategies in a match? In other words, how do you deal with the unknown, or how do you take control? Like, how do you without just saying like, well, I just overpower them?
No, there's kind of like there's a bit to that. So like mentally going into the match, it's really like a 3-step process of I have to be willing to go all in, which means that I'm going to let the part of myself that's not necessarily like the thinking part and the talking part, not the yappy part of myself, but the doer, I'm going to let that part take over and do what it does, because I do jiu-jitsu every day. I do jiu-jitsu sometimes in my dreams, and then I won't remember the dream. So how could the thinker be the one that's doing jiu-jitsu? It's not. You know, if I'm doing it in the dream and I don't remember the dream entirely, then who's doing the jiu-jitsu in the dream?
You're talking about your conscious mind, right?
Exactly.
Is the fight
Conscious
the
mind.
dream?
Yeah.
Do you lose yourself completely? Do
Well,
you just
sometimes I won't even remember what happened in the match in the dream. I just know that there was a match, you know? So I know that I was doing jiu-jitsu in my dreams. I don't remember specifically what I did. But
What about the match itself? How much conscious versus unconscious do you say you have in those experiences?
earlier on, it was more conscious, and then I started experiencing lapses in my conscious ability to focus during the match. Like, I would just sort of like blank out and find myself doing something that wasn't my game plan. And I realized that ultimately that's inevitable, that you can't take that out of yourself because it's just going to happen. And when it happens, the best thing you can do is be good at refocusing quickly, but also that the unconscious part of yourself is trained to operate seamlessly.
So without kind of going in circles, but would you say that in a match you want to be aware, or do you want to be instinctual?
I want to be 100% committed to trying to win and execute my game plan. That's sort of conscious, right? And then I want to be compassionate with myself about the results, that I'm just going to live with the results, whatever it is. And that's also pretty conscious. And then lastly, I want to have this sense that I'm being competitive with paying attention, and that's conscious. But beyond that, and then my like game plan, the specifics of what I'm going to do movement wise, I really try not to I try to avoid thinking. the thinking becomes a limitation because you'll think things and they're not true. Like, you'll think often, like, most of the time, you might notice this when you're rolling, is like, if you think that you're going to finish someone, that you just get yourself really tired. If you find yourself thinking, oh, I'm going to get them, you're probably not, and you're probably just going to gas yourself.
Yeah, I understand that. When you are looking too far ahead and looking to the finish, you often, I guess you realize that just doesn't work that way.
It creates a separation between you and the artwork, so to speak.
Right.
Like, I need to be closer to what I'm doing than that.
But everything has to have a process. You can't just go from, A to Z. You
Yes.
gotta hit everything in between. And
Absolutely.
And you have to be, in all things in life, and like jiu-jitsu, you have to be able to improvise along the way.
Yes.
So
yeah, that's huge.
So now, if you don't mind, I want to go kind of off the competitive floor and kind of talk about your training life.
Yeah.
So, where are you training?
Right now, I train on my own pretty much. I have like my own little program at a gym called AP Training Center. It's primarily a judo school, and I run a jiu-jitsu program out of there where I kind of take various vagabonds and people who just want to get better, and we just work together on different things. A lot of people come to me for lessons too, because people do like one lesson with me and then go and apply what they learned in competition, at that weekend. And they're like, man, like, I didn't do anything that I learned in class. And then I went and did this stuff that you showed me. Like, I got to do more of this. So I've actually gotten quite a few students that way.
Where are you learning how are you growing and developing yourself?
I train with a couple of different black belts down in Florida, but then a lot of the development that I do on my own stuff comes from looking either at like high-level jiu-jitsu instructionals or matches, or also other martial arts. So sometimes I'll see something in Aikido or Japanese jiu-jitsu or Chinese martial arts, and I'll be kind of inspired to play with that position and that technique and integrate it. But the truth is that I guess it's kind of like what happens as you get deeper into any field. The work that needs to be done becomes clearer, and it can be almost like a little bit like it's not that it's boring, but it's just routine. So there's many things that I need to get better on. So if you give me a room full of white belts to roll with, there's a lot to work on there for me. I can take that room and turn it into a lot of really important and valid jiu-jitsu training.
I want you to talk about the lockdown and the Ezekiel that you've been killing people with, man.
Absolutely. It's really funny because I remember the day you taught me that Ezekiel, because my reaction to it was the same as everybody else's, which was he says to me, hey, have you ever done a sleeveless Ezekiel? I go, I heard those don't work. He goes, oh no, it works. And then he does it to me, and I'm like, oh crap, this works. And so I liked this no-gi Ezekiel choke, because in no-gi, a lot of times what happens is because you don't have the lapels, the mount position is a little bit underpowered. It's a little bit weak because it's very difficult to isolate the arms when you don't have a way to attack the neck unless you've already isolated an arm, aka like a katagatame or like a head and arm. Like you need the person's arm up. So you can't do that in no-gi without attacking the neck somehow. So I got into this no-gi Ezekiel, and I started using it from the mount. But then what I found was I was like, this is actually not as effective from the mount because my spine is parallel to the opponent. It makes it easy to roll me. So I started kind of going knee on belly. It wasn't really working. And then I went back to side control, and I was doing this low side control sort of Ezekiel. And that was starting to work a lot. And then, and this was right around the time that I moved, I figured out that I could hit it from half guard top. And once I figured out that I could hit it from half guard top, I was like, man, it must be possible from half guard bottom. And when I got to half guard bottom and I started throwing on a lockdown with it, and the lockdown was keeping the person's leg trapped completely, and they couldn't create or make any distance.
It kept their hips locked.
Exactly.
Right.
And at that point, it just became just a kill shot. I mean, I was getting anybody I wanted, like anybody.
Well, the reason is because you put someone in lockdown like that, and they can't back up. What they do, they try and smash you and get close to you.
And they go deep on that underhook, which actually
Yeah.
makes it worse for the Ezekiel.
Right.
Yep. So I was like, as soon as I developed that system there, and then also I developed a little system on the opposite side of how to actually get my arm in, a way to use like kind of S grips and various grip breaks to make sure that I could win the hand fighting battle. And then seriously, I mean, it was like I was putting people to sleep all over the place with it. I was tapping black belts with it. It became a really, really powerful move.
It's a very sneaky choke. It's a very sneaky choke because once it gets set in, it's like you can only panic to that. There's no way to really clear the hands or make space. There's nowhere to churn.
Some guys with really big, like they're like over 250 and they're really muscular, they can punch their arm up through the bottom, but that's really the exception, not the rule.
Right.
I mean, I've gotten a lot of people with that choke, man.
Yeah.
Ton of mileage.
Well, I got to tell you, it was really fun to see you take it to like the next level and really push it. Like you were saying before, you'll do a private lesson, you'll show a student a move, and then they want to come back and learn more and apply it. It was really, really cool to see that. So I want you to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, it was a great move. Another one you showed me that I got a lot out of is the little heel hook from Ashi when the person is just in Ashigarami, the first one, or single leg X, and you reach down and grab their heel.
Mm-hmm.
I've gotten so many brown and black belts with that one, man. They're just like, people do not know that move.
It's like those little wrist locks that you find yourself in.
Yeah.
Or
Little sneaky moves. Yeah. Well, sometimes people leave something dangling behind. They don't realize it's easily attackable, and they're leaving themselves exposed.
It's so much about awareness. Like, if you're aware of the move and you know about it, it's almost like half the battle of not getting caught with it. Because even if the person slaps it on, you're familiar with what they're trying to do and you can resist.
I find that with like the flower sweep. Something you can surprise people with, but like once you do it once or they know you're known for it, they really have to either be tired or make a mistake that you're capitalized on. It's just timing. You got to be at the right time. But it's
Absolutely
hard to set that thing up and people see it coming a mile away. And
what's your practice method? So do you work on something for a period of time? Do you work on everything all at once? Do you see something that you kind of want to repeat?
I like to be fairly focused within a particular set of skills. I don't like to jump around too much. I mean, I have different like projects, so to speak, that I'm working on. Like, I'm working on leg locks, I'm working on berimbolas, I'm working on wrestling. Those are different projects, but within those projects, I tend to be pretty focused on them. A big component is study. I have to study the material and look at the movements and see who's executing them the best and how they do it. And then from there, I am not a big fan of like drilling, but I will do some drilling if the movement is really complicated. So I'll like break it down and kind of practice it for a set length of time. But I much prefer to roll with people and try to practice the movement live. I'd much rather just try to troubleshoot it live. I think I get a better approximation of what it actually is that way. Sometimes I feel like when you're drilling, it's like I'm trying to draw your shadow. And I really want to draw a picture of you, and the shadow just doesn't have the same amount of information and the richness that the rolling does. So I get more feedback, and that feedback gives me a better place to make adjustments.
How about as an instructor, do you agree with that statement as well, or do you think that it's important for students to drill moves on a regular basis?
They have to have the movement patterns in their system. So, like, if somebody hasn't been doing martial arts for 10, 15 years, then
start them out drilling.
They have to drill
Right.
because they need to put some kind of pattern in their system. We have to train that unconscious self and put material in there. But I also think that process can be accelerated by them watching matches. If they just watch high-level people, they don't even have to know what's happening. It's just putting sort of content into their bank. So I think that's a really important supplement for drilling.
But for you, in terms of your training, you just need to be moving all the time.
I do drill, but it's just it's not the way other people drill. Like, I'll do very, very, very focused on a specific technique. I'll do it for 5 minutes at a time. Then the partner goes, and then we're working on maybe 1 or 2 techniques for 2 or 3 hours that way.
Yeah. See, right now we're 3 guys that are talking about things that we know about each other. The people that are listening, they don't know. Jamie Nottingham, they don't know that he was raised to be a samurai.
More or less.
From the time that he was
a warrior,
an infant, his grandmother had him doing techniques like jumping, climbing trees, kicking trees, right,
Yeah,
lifting
wild
rocks,
stuff,
right.
yeah.
Yeah, man, it's so funny because whenever you speak to someone who gets really good at something, and I'm sure you know people in the art world, that they're so good at something, whether or not it comes from it being natural, or they just work so hard at it that became masterful at their skill. But you're talking to somebody that like, he thinks about martial arts differently. He learns differently. I remember that from day one when we started doing jiu-jitsu, when we start moving around, you start training with us. You accelerated, but you also came in to work every day wearing a different martial art uniform, bro. Let's just put that out there.
I was gonna ask Jamie about that. I was gonna ask him about his sort of eclectic style, and also in you compete in different. I've seen. All right. Short list. The last several competitions that you did, what were they?
Mostly a submission, grappling, jiu-jitsu, but then I also did a kickboxing match, and I also did the catch wrestling competition. I've sort of looked at doing some other things, but a lot of the more eclectic stuff they've been really shut down due to the lockdown and stuff.
Okay, so I also saw you shoot wrestling, or is
Yep.
that catch wrestling?
That's catch wrestling. Yeah.
wrestling. All right,
Shoot
so
is the same as catch.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, how is shoot or catch wrestling shoot different from from jiu-jitsu?
So
Is that catch can catch?
Yeah. So jiu-jitsu thinks about grappling mainly in terms of, well, this is the truth about jiu-jitsu from kind of their standpoint, is that we want to use our legs to control the opponent, right? So regardless of the position, the main idea, and this is why side control gets 0 points, is that we're using our legs to control the opponent. We get 3 points for passing the guard because we've taken our opponent's legs out of the game. We've passed their guard. Once we're past the guard, all the pins involve really using the legs to control us, and that's really the main idea in jiu-jitsu, is controlling the opponent via our legs. In catch wrestling, they're thinking about grappling kind of horizontally. They're thinking that we want to approach the whole body, and we're going to use our weight to pin the opponent. And catch wrestling is much more focused on the pin. And there's arguments for and against this. So I think that on the one hand, as far as energy capabilities go, you get wrestlers and grapplers who are better athletes when you have a pin system implemented. If we weren't allowed to stay on our back in jiu-jitsu, we'd all be stronger athletes. We'd move more. We'd be more active. And also, the pin is a functional high ground in combat. And if you understand jiu-jitsu, then you understand this and you can take advantage of it. But not all jiu-jitsu players do. There's definitely a lot of people I've seen in jiu-jitsu who don't understand how to progress from side control to the mount and then turn that mount into an armbar. So I think that the biggest difference is that catch wrestling isn't focused on using the legs to control the opponent. It's more focused on using our weight. And then also that catch wrestling has various control positions beyond using the legs. It's interested in cradles. It's interested in Nelsons. It's interested in various kinds of ways to weave up the opponent's legs and trap them. So,
are you utilizing, do you find yourself utilizing both of these separate skills and philosophies when you go into?
I kind of feel like the style thing's an illusion, man. Like I kind of don't like it. I've tried to do away with it mentally and been unsuccessful, honestly, because there's just too much information between all the styles. So I see how it came about, because people need to pare down how they're going to train. They need to have a plan for what am I going to do today, or what am I going to do this week for my training. So I see how style comes about, but on the flip side, it's like there's grappling and there's striking and there's movement and there's takedowns, and that's martial arts. Like it's all we have 2 arms and 2 legs. We all have the same anatomy. There's only so many ways to do things.
Yeah, but styles really go into the sporting side of it, too, based on what you're saying, right? I mean, I get that grappling's grappling, but if you are a Sambo practitioner going up against a judo practitioner, there's going to be slightly different rules, especially once you hit the ground, right?
Yeah. So I think that's kind of like, in my opinion, that's a little bit of like, it's kind of like an artifice on top of what's really happening. And that's why I like to do so many different styles, is that there's grappling skill. And that's sort of the funneling skill that allows you to put a person in a position where you can do what you want to them. And then there's knowledge of the rule set, and there's experience in the rule set, and all these other factors that play in. But the reality is that what I try to do is I try to train for those other factors enough that I know the rule set, I know what's going on, and then I can let my grappling skill kind of be developed. And what I've found is that if I change the rule set, the less experience I have in a rule set, the more grappling skill gets developed, because I'm using that skill to compensate for my lack of knowledge of the moves. So I find that it's actually a richer learning environment, and that's sort of why I've been doing that.
That's interesting. So, ever have any interest in competing in mixed martial arts?
Yeah. I competed before in mixed martial arts. I lost that fight, but I definitely want to get back to it. It's just, the truth about that is that, when I was up here in Danbury, that I was training with Glover Teixeira, and that I was training with him and his pro fighters, and it was such a good, like, MMA training environment that, like, I just had such good access to training there. And since then, I haven't been able to find something like that. When I went to Florida, I had really good access to jiu-jitsu when I was training at Fight Sports and with Wagner. But the MMA teams just, I went and I checked them out, and they didn't have anything like that. And it's just kind of hard for me to, like, go into that in such a contentious sport without having a really good team to back it up.
It doesn't make sense.
Yeah. I need the
right
support.
tools.
Yeah.
So where do you see your future competition look like? A competition career looking like?
I mean, I hope to keep competing and keep winning and make it onto some of the bigger cards. I ultimately really just like training and teaching. I definitely will keep competing, because I feel like it's a really valuable tool for self-development and for my own, like, skill. And I do like to test myself against people, but the real focus for me is just on my own development. Like I always say, like, it's just on getting stronger and getting healthier and better. So, I mean, as long as competing in jiu-jitsu continues to help me with that, then I'll definitely keep doing it.
Tell me about your program, what you're running. So you're running the class, right? Is this something that you're planning on building, or is it just...
Absolutely, yeah.
All right, talk about that.
So I have sort of like this unique idea for jiu-jitsu that, number one, that I can teach people in a concept-based fashion from the beginning. So I kind of have like a very different lesson plan for the first few lessons. It's split sort of between, like, they do some basic exercises and some movements, like normal stuff you do on your first day. Then there's also like a little bit of it's about 20 minutes of an explanation about the points and why it works the way it does. The whole goal of the way I've structured it is to try to get people oriented in jiu-jitsu as soon as possible, so they're not just sort of thrashing around not knowing.
Can you be a little bit more specific about the movements and the skills that you're focusing on in these early parts?
So you have the hip escape or the shrimp, right? And then so that's the first thing I show people is backwards hip escaping and forward hip escaping, because I want to give them the ability to move around on the ground. And I talk to them a little bit about how the shrimp or the backwards hip escape is probably like your go-to tool in jiu-jitsu for fixing problems. Like, it's sort of like you have a computer and it's not working. Everybody knows what's the first thing you do.
Restart.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, that's our shrimp in jiu-jitsu. And then as you get a little bit better, you develop the ability to actually turn away from the opponent and Granby roll. And then that's like your hard reset. You know what I mean? Like, you're really having a big problem. You got to unplug it from the wall. So I try to train people in those basic skills: shrimping, forward hip escape, butt scoot backwards and forwards, and then also the technical stand-up. And I feel like those build, and croc walks as well. And I feel like those build a really important foundation for how we move on the ground.
Technical stand-up or AKA standing up in base.
Yes, exactly.
Are you doing gi, no gi?
We do both.
Both, okay.
Yeah.
And you're gearing the culture and the environment more for sport.
Honestly, no. It's that's what I really like about this way that I've been approaching it, is that, see, from my standpoint, the point system isn't just for competition. It's actually a code. It's like a secret code in jiu-jitsu that unlocks what it really is. So you take the points and you can understand that, okay, if I get 2 points for something, that means that I've changed the position a little bit to my advantage, whether it's competition, whether it's a street fight. And this applies to submission only competition too. If I sweep you, it gives me an advantage. That advantage is not it's not arbitrary based off of the fact that, you know, there's a ref in a suit who gives up 2 points.
Right.
It's actually a real advantage that comes from my positional advantage. Exactly. Right. So whether if it's a street fight now and I sweep you, I can hit you. If it's MMA and I sweep you, I can hit you. If it's jiu-jitsu points, I'm up on points. If it's jiu-jitsu submission only, I now have a gravity advantage on you.
Right.
So I feel like the way I teach and the way I try to gear the program is really open-ended. It can become focused on self-defense. It can become focused on competition. It can be focused on, you know, the historical art of jiu-jitsu.
Right. I think it's a really important point for a coach to impart on the students, especially in the beginning phases. Like, if you don't compete and you really, you know, unless you have a complete competition school, the majority of your students aren't going to compete, and you'll have a handful of people that will compete, right?
Yeah.
But when you're teaching, I find it helps to add a value to the position for the students. So they're kind of like shooting for something and tallying for something.
Yeah.
Especially like if you're doing drills, the way I like to do things, especially with brand new white belts, is we'll give them a minute to like pass the guard, or a minute to go from, you know, side body into trying to retain or regain their guard. And in that transition, if someone gets a knee and belly, you know, we talk about it, that's 2 points. If they get swept, that's 2 points, right? Obviously, they're not going to be doing takedowns because they're already on the ground. But if they get to the mount, then that's 4 points. If they turn over, give it the back, it's 4 points. Why do you get more points for those positions? Because you can do so much more damage. They're higher valued positions.
Absolutely.
So,
and the control is better. You know,
right.
You have your thighs around the person. You're actually completely immobilizing them.
Yeah.
Yep. I mean, it's just like anything, right? You have to give people a whole bunch of set of tools to use, but they have to know how to use them. And there's often a progression and order to all these things. I mean,
I just feel like the process, as I see it, is more about internalizing sets of principles and rules about what to do in various situations, and less about individual techniques. The techniques are examples of those rules in action, and they're meant to be like it's like a snapshot. It's like, oh, this is what was happening, or a cross section. This is a cross section of what was happening in this particular match between these two people. But it's more important to actually understand the underlying rules. A lot of times I find myself asking, when I see something really innovative or really cool, I'm just like, man, how did they come up with this? How did they figure this out? And that's really the question that I'm trying to wrap my brain around, is how to get myself in a place mentally where I'm seeing that in that same way as that innovator was.
Got a question for you, Jamie.
Yeah.
Who, and this is gi and no gi.
Sure.
Who you rooting for, man? Who you following? Who motivates you? Who do you really pull inspiration from in those two worlds? Like, who do you think is at the top of their game?
In the gi, it's hard to say. I mean, there's kind of a lot of people who are vying.
Well, who's your
for
favorite?
It.
Not necessarily who's at the top or who's the best.
I would have to say that some of the guys that they're not out of Unity anymore, but the Meow Brothers, and then also Levy Jones Leary, that I really enjoy watching their game, because I always love when somebody tells somebody, oh, you know, this doesn't work, and people were saying, oh, you know, the Berimbolo doesn't work at a high level, and those guys just came in and they, like, the same year that they were saying that, I think Keenan said that, and then Levy Jones Leary won Worlds Berimboloing everybody.
Right.
So for me, that's really impressive. And then Nogi, I have a lot of respect professionally for Gordon Ryan. Like, the content he puts out is amazing. His jiu-jitsu is amazing. And also he, in some ways, has paved the way for other jiu-jitsu athletes to make more money in the sport. So I think that he's really been a pioneer. Somebody up and coming that I really like is Mika Galvao. He's been tearing up the competition scene. I think he just took a loss to one of the Rotolos, but honestly, the stuff he's doing is, he has some really innovative jiu-jitsu that if you watch him fight and roll, it's stuff you've just never seen. You're just like, whoa, what was that? And it's really impressive.
That's amazing. Where everything's going, where the sport's going, what people are doing, what they're learning, how they're learning. I mean, there's so much knowledge out there, and it's amazing. I mean, it's like instead of having one instructor, you've got the world at your fingertips. But do you have like a do you want to travel? Do you want to go seek out knowledge from somebody in person? Like, how do you intend on gaining all this information? If do you think it's possible to do with media alone, or do you think that you need to get out there and be part of a bigger team in order to reach your next level?
Too controversial, but I would say that I was convinced that I needed a bigger team, and then I had that team and I was with them, and then I wasn't really competing, and I was kind of trapped by the environment in a lot of ways. And what ended up happening was when I left the team, that I had more opportunities to compete, and I went to another team, and I was with that team for a while, and then I left that team too, and I had no team, and it hasn't impacted my performance. So
let's just face it, man. You need to be like a Ronin,
Yeah.
Well, that's sort of what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
Like I'm trying, I don't know. I'm very much, I'm old school.
I guess it's like
I got a school. I got Brandon. That's my knowledge. That's I suppose
everyone learns it.
historically
Well,
martial arts has been sort of like student and master, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. The thing
you
is,
have
that's
many masters. Your
that's
masters
the thing, though,
are
is that's the story, right? The story is student and master, but they don't tell you how long that story was for. Sometimes it's 2 years, sometimes it's 5 years, sometimes it's 10 years. There's very few student and masters. They are together 30 years. That's special.
Well, the old school way was your teacher would teach you a certain skill set, and then once you achieve that skill set, then they'd write you a letter. They'd sign it with their seal, and they'd send you to another teacher.
Yeah, I've been passed off many times. Like, get out of here.
Right. Yeah, we gave you to Florida. Are you planning on coming back up north?
I'm not really sure. I mean, I've been traveling so much that I think I'm probably going to keep traveling and just kind of moving around, because there's just been opportunities kind of all over. So it makes sense to take them.
So I have to ask you this question. How do you choose at what level to compete in? Okay, so in competitions, correct me if I'm wrong, there's white through black belt level. Age groups, weight classes.
Yep.
How do you...
How does he categorize himself?
Yeah.
I mean, for the most part, I think that you're looking for a reasonable challenge, a manageable challenge. So I kind of calibrate it according to that. I mean, obviously, you want to be honest about your experience and your weight and those kinds of things. But
you're doing super fights?
Yeah,
mostly.
Absolutely.
Okay, so what Moshe's asking is really up to the promoter. All right? Right?
They usually give me the chance to accept or deny the match.
Well, that's what I mean. But they're going to offer you people that are within, your parameters, right? Like,
Sometimes. I mean, sometimes they're trying to eat you up, or sometimes they're trying to feed you somebody.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like that this guy has 10 to 12 years experience in 2,500 fight, whatever the case is, whatever crazy number it is.
Yeah, like at the catch wrestling thing, they sent me to this guy, and he was like, had 26 matches on Fight to Win. He's a 4-stripe brown belt. I was like, he's 210. I was like, okay. I was like, I think they're trying to feed me to this guy.
Right.
And what happened? You ate him up?
I ended up beating him. Yeah.
So are you talking more about like if you went into a tournament
No, I
bracket
mean when
style?
you're, I guess.
How do I decide which competitions to enter?
Yes.
It's about sometimes it's about what they offer, right? Like if there's a prize, that sometimes is a good draw. But for me, mostly it's about experience. So I usually, I mean, I'll be totally honest. Like when I first started training, I would enter competitions. I would enter like every division, and then over time, I realized that like it was like too much, kind of, that I really preferred just do one division or just do one thing that day if I was just gonna do gi or just do no gi. So these days, what I try to do is just, like I said, find a manageable challenge. Like, find a division with 6 or 7 people or 8 or 9 people and jump in that. And just kind of treat it like a little mission and just go get it done and then be done with it.
So let me ask you this, Jamie. You have your gym now. You have your space. You have your program you're building, right?
Yep.
You have your goals for competing. I mean, you're not necessarily going for a title or like a number of matches or tournament. You're not chasing a scene this year specifically, are you?
No, I'm just trying to be the best that I can be. Once hopefully soon I'll be getting my brown belt, and hopefully then I'll be able to start going on the IBJJF scene and because they allow heel hooks now.
Okay,
and
so
after that.
That's exactly where I was going with this. Who's promoting you? Who are you under in order to get promoted? How's it going to work for you?
Well, I've worked with a couple of different black belts, and then it's funny, like when I was a blue belt, I was having a really hard time like getting promoted because I left 10th Planet and I left Fight Sports, and Fight Sports just definitely wasn't going to promote me, and I found out 10th Planet wasn't going to promote me, so I was like, man. So
I have to ask for what reasons, or maybe
so Fight
what
Sports,
happened there.
Fight
we got to
Sports
know.
was definitely, they were just trying to sandbag me. Like they were trying to keep me at blue belt because they will keep somebody at blue belt until they win. I mean, I was blue belt for 2.5 years. There was this guy that I trained with who's now a purple belt finally, and he was a blue belt for 6 years. And he won worlds in no-gi at blue belt, like weight and absolute, and he was waiting to the next year to win gi worlds weight and absolute, and then they were going to promote him, but then the coronavirus came and they finally decided it's been too long and we got to promote this guy.
So you're saying they wanted to keep you a blue belt to keep you winning under their name?
Yeah, that's what they do. I mean, they're like they have a, what do you call it, like a machine, you know what I mean, and they're trying to run their machine the way they do it, so they try to stack the odds in their favor. That's like, honestly, like it sounds kind of weird, but that's just, it's super Carlson Gracie lineage. Like,
Is that also part of the game? I can't imagine they're the only school that does this.
no, they're not.
A lot of coaches give the talk. Listen, you're not going to get your promotion until you go win the worlds, or right?
Yep.
Yeah. So
it's common in competition schools to do this kind of stuff. In fact, like it might sound like maybe negative about them, but they're also just trying to give their students the best opportunities to win against other people who are doing the same stuff.
yeah, it's not always a negative.
No, it isn't.
But
Sometimes it's really positive for an athlete.
I mean, sandbagging is negative. Let's not get that
Yeah.
twisted. No, some people do that. They build a team around keeping someone as a gatekeeper as long as they can, man. But all right, so you have someone in a base. Well, that's an issue that I've had in the past, and when you have students that train at different schools for whatever reason, it can become an issue.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
at a certain point, like let's say instructor A wants to promote you to the next level, and instructor B doesn't think you're ready, so instructor A gives you the belt, and you go back to instructor B's school wearing the belt. They can become an issue.
Yeah, again, I don't want to be too controversial, but I would go as far to say, and I give this as advice to white belts, that the belt system in jiu-jitsu is fundamentally a matter of loyalty, and it's really, really important if you want to get belted that you stick with an instructor. And there's like, if your goal is belts, there's no reason to cross train. Like, if your goal is to be as good as you can be, then you can make arguments for or against cross-training. I'm not going to get into that. But
or joining a big team that has accessibility to
Yes.
people constantly coming in, having different beasts on the
exactly.
mat.
Getting
Large
different looks.
schools
Right,
with lots
right.
of bodies.
Right.
There's lots of options.
So you're not saying it's bad to have a goal of getting your belt.
No, it's
Right,
great. That's
right.
that's an important goal. In fact, sometimes I wish I had been more cognizant of that goal that I actually do have in my heart. You know what I mean? I was like, I should have paid attention to this. You know what I mean? I was really feeling that when I was stuck at blue belt. But then once I got promoted to purple, it was kind of weird. It was kind of like something broke the dam, and I've had like 5 or 6 offers now of people to give me my brown belt. So I'm like I have to. The sad thing about anything is that once you get too deep into it, it gets pretty political. So I have to.
Right, like who do I want to get my belt from? Right, like who's gonna have the most weight in the.
So, all right. In closing, because it's time to wrap up episode 3. So Jamie, what's next, man? What's the short and what's the long-term goals?
I mean, the short-term goal is to keep competing and to grow my program at AP as best as I can. And then long-term, I mean, really, I'm looking for like-minded people who want to do the same stuff as me to eventually build a stronger team, you know, to recruit and bring in people who are really capable, and whether they're coaches, athletes, whatever. I mean, the truth is that I'm really open-minded, and I want to get a good team together to be able to achieve bigger goals.
That's amazing. Yeah. Well, I can't wait to train with you. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, man. You know, I'm always here to help you any way that I can. Jamie is a really, really smart young man. He absorbs information. He's great with people. He's got a great spirit and great energy. And I always tease him about being like the human Elmo, because he's got the big eyes and the beard, and he's just, to me, he's just such a sweet guy. But
yeah, I mean, I also think you're an immense talent.
Absolutely
I think that
talented,
your dedication to the sport and to what you do, it's inspiring, and I hope it inspires other people. And I really wish you nothing but the best in your future, Jamie. This is awesome.
Thank you.
Plug yourself, man. Where can people find you? Where can they follow you?
If you want to check me out on Instagram, it's Jamie Loves Martial Arts. And then if you want to go and follow the gym that I'm working at as well, it's called AP Training Center, Fort Lauderdale.
All right, man. Listen, we want all you guys out there that are listening to the Core Academy podcast to follow us. This is episode number 3. Jamie Nottingham, thank you so much for coming up, man, and talking with us. Moshe, thanks again, my brother. This was awesome.
It's always great.
Thank you.
To talk to both of you, and us.
Yeah, let's go do some training.
Huge honor from me.
Thanks, man.
All right, guys.
Peace. You just experienced the Core Academy podcast. Feel the flow. Jiu-Jitsu for life. Us.